These days, everyone seems to be talking about AI tools for programming. Things like ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, the new Cursor AI code editor, and so on. There's a lot of hype in the industry around AI right now, but there is, in fact, a place for these tools in web development and programming in general. And so I think it's important to learn and to think about this new reality early on and address the questions that you might already have about what this means for the future. So that's what this lecture is all about. Let me just warn you that it's gonna be pretty opinionated, but I believe that this is what a beginner like you should know and do. So, as I already mentioned, we're talking about AI tools like ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, or the Cursor AI code editor. And by the time you're watching this, I'm sure there are already a million new fancy tools out there. Now, what all of these have in common is that they're powered by an LLM, so a large language model like GPT or Claude, in order to generate code based on a prompt the user gives the model. That's basically all they do, but different tools have different ways of working and a different user experience. So basically, we can ask these tools to write code snippets or function for us, and some tools like Cursor can even generate entire files based on our prompts. Copilot and Cursor also give us a very powerful autocomplete feature that is aware of the code that you're writing, your comments, your clipboard, and also the entire codebase. You can even chat with your codebase, like asking questions about how certain parts of the app work in case you don't understand something. And all of this works pretty well sometimes and not so well in some other times. But more about potential problems later on. Now, when we choose to work with an AI tool in our code, or even just for learning or for writing some simple function, we need to follow a workflow, just like we follow a workflow when we're coding and solving problems ourselves without an AI assistant. And we've already talked about that workflow for solving problems and the different steps involved earlier in this section, right? And so, let's now adapt that workflow for the age of AI in case you decide to adopt any of these technologies. So, just like in our earlier workflow, it all starts with 100% understanding the problem that we need to solve. Don't use an AI tool if you don't even know exactly what you need to solve, because this will just introduce unwanted code. You can also apply the divide and conquer step that we discussed earlier to basically divide the problem into smaller sub-problems, if it's a really big one. Like, you're not gonna tell the AI, just write me a social network like Instagram, right? That's way too big and outright impossible. You would have to divide that one into thousands of small subproblems. But anyway, next up, you're gonna choose which AI tool you want to use, and then you need to write a very specific prompt, telling it exactly what you want to get done. For this, it's important to feed the AI the exact context of the problem, like what topic it's about, the exact goal that should be achieved, what language it should write the solution in, what coding style you want, and so on. Then, based on this specific prompt, the AI will do its magic and generate a solution to your problem and output that solution in the form of code and in the language of your choice. So in our case, that's of course gonna be JavaScript, but it could also be HTML, CSS, Python, Java, and so on. And now here comes the most important part, where you as the developer need to very thoroughly inspect and test the generated code. Again, this is extremely important because code generated by AI can contain lots of bugs which are sometimes very well hidden, or it can also suggest a solution that's more complicated or convoluted than necessary. More about that in the next slide, but you can already start to see that these tools should only be used by developers who already know what they are doing, right? But anyway, after reviewing and testing the code, you can use the AI to correct or improve the solution by generating a new, very specific prompt telling the AI assistant what's wrong and what you need fixed. So this is a pretty iterative process until you reach a solution that you're happy with. Sometimes this actually never happens, in which case you need to abandon the idea of using AI for this specific case. But if you are satisfied with the answer and are 100% sure that it's correct, then you can integrate the solution into your code base. So, this is how you would use an AI assistant to help you write some code. But when exactly should you actually use a tool like this and the code that it generates? Well, before you choose to use an AI assistant to solve any task, you first need to make sure that you actually know how to code yourself on your own. So fundamental programming skills are absolutely essential. And so that's what this course is for. Now, I'm giving you this lecture early on because there are so many questions about AI these days. And so I wanted to highlight the need for learning programming right off the gate, instead of relying on AI before you even know how to program. Now, in the same vein, you also need to be able to solve problems on your own and develop very good critical thinking. Critical thinking is especially important when you're dealing with AI-generated code, because many times it contains bugs that are hard to find, or the code is simply not good enough. Always question whether the AI output actually makes sense. Finally, coding should sparkle joy and curiosity. If coding is boring or not exciting anyway, if you lack the passion for writing code, then maybe this isn't the right career anyway. So, in summary, I would advise to not just use AI without knowing what you're doing. Otherwise, AI will turn you into a terrible programmer, or maybe not even a programmer at all. If you rely on AI-generated code all the time, you're gonna grow dependent on it, and you'll just become someone who copy-pastes code left and right until you have some barely working app. An app that you don't understand, can't maintain, and can't fix in case anything breaks, which, let me assure you, will break. So, someone like this is not a programmer in my mind. Now, some people will go ahead and do just this. So they will just copy-paste, and they might have some success with it to a certain degree, but if you want to do things well, again, my advice is to learn the fundamentals from this course and become a real programmer instead. Now, this may all sound a bit negative, but of course, it is fine to use AI in certain situations. I do it myself all the time. But instead of relying on AI to do everything, you should see AI as an assistant. AI is meant to help you, not to replace you. So AI tools can and should be used to help you save time on repetitive or mundane tasks like boilerplate code. So things that don't require you to think much anyway. AI assistants are also great for learning. For example, you can just ask it questions about programming topics, or you can ask for code solutions and then analyze the output step by step in order to learn something new. This way, you're gonna find new tools and techniques that you can learn that maybe otherwise you would have missed. So you wouldn't have known they even existed. And we'll actually do all this in the next lecture. Okay, now assuming that you did decide to use AI and you now have your AI-generated code, when is it actually okay to incorporate this code into your app? Well, I'm gonna start by reiterating on what I said earlier, because it's just so important. You should only incorporate AI code if you could have written that code yourself. The ideal scenario is that before asking the AI to write the code for you, you have already thought of the steps and the JavaScript features that you might need in order to solve the problem. and maybe even imagined the code in your mind. Then all the AI does is to actually write the code you had already imagined, which is going to be a lot faster than you typing it out by hand. And this actually happens to me many times when I use AI, and it feels pretty magical, to be honest. Now, if you could have written the code yourself, the next guideline is pretty obvious, but it's still important to highlight the fact that you should truly understand the generated code before incorporating it into your codebase. Also, as I already touched on earlier, you need to ensure that the code is 100% correct. All this will ensure that errors made by AI don't make it into your codebase. This is especially important for mission-critical parts of your app like core business logic. And so I advise you to not even use AI for these crucial tasks at all. So, to recap, it's absolutely okay to incorporate some code that an AI has written for you if you're only using the AI to be faster at non-crucial tasks, even though you could have done it yourself. Otherwise, you'll never be able to fix the code when it eventually breaks, and maybe even more importantly, you won't grow as a developer. But now it's time to finally tackle these big questions that many beginners have, which go something like, do I even need to grow as a developer now? Won't AI take my job anyway at some point? Or should I even bother learning to code now? Well, answering this type of question is one of the main goals of this lecture. So the short answer to the question, will AI take my job, is no. So case closed, right? Well, maybe not so fast. Maybe you want to understand why I'm so confident that developers will still be needed going forward. Now, I need to preface this by saying that this is of course my personal opinion, and that I, shockingly, cannot see the future. But I've thought about this a lot, and here's what I think. So the first thing that we should address is that there's just a lot of hype around AI these days. And that's true for all industries, not just web development. Many people seem to believe that AI is going to replace us soon. And there are actually companies trying to do just that. But they seem to forget that we've been in this situation before. We've had tools like Dreamweaver or WordPress or site builders like Wix in the past, which were supposed to make web developers obsolete. But did that ever happen? No, it didn't, and I'm sure that it won't happen this time around. Now, I do believe that AI is here to stay, and that it will be very helpful for us developers, but it's clearly overhyped at the moment. But this brings me to the next point, which is that, indeed, things will change in the future. No one knows how much and how fast, but we can say for sure that some portions of applications will be written by AI in the future. This is already happening right now, and this tendency is only gonna increase. But the thing is that this isn't necessarily bad. As we saw before, AI code can be great for automating boring boilerplate stuff that takes up a lot of time or other mundane tasks in software development. This means that for all the other interesting tasks, you will still be needed. You, the developer, will always stay in control of implementing and of adapting the application's architecture and of writing the core business logic. At least that's how it should work. You're also the one who asks the AI for help in the first place, and you're the one who is going to review the code, test it, and finally integrate it into the app. So again, the developers are going to stay in control and can actively decide how much they want to involve the AI in their projects. Because the truth is, software developers do a lot more than just writing code. They're able to maintain an overview and see the bigger picture of complex projects, and they understand and implement design principles. Now, I guess all this is a bit hard for you to imagine as you're just starting out on this programming journey. But there are just things that are too complex for AI to handle, where it's not just writing a few lines of code, but really thinking hard about problems and solutions. And so that's where the human programmers come into play. These humans are also way more creative than AI, and they're able to actually collaborate with other developers and, maybe even more importantly, collaborate with the clients. So it won't be easy to automate all that stuff away with AI, and it won't happen soon. On top of this, as I also already hinted at, from my experience, AI-generated code is still pretty buggy and often doesn't give you the best or most up-to-date solutions. It's especially bad at debugging non-trivial problems that span multiple functions or files, hallucinating solutions that don't solve anything and just make the code worse and worse each time you ask it to improve the solution. I've seen this happening a few times where the most state-of-the-art AI models become completely useless. So yeah, I think we're pretty safe, especially when it comes to debugging. Another aspect that's interesting to consider is the fact that right now the world actually needs more software than can be built by us humans right now. So how many times have you used some terrible website from a local business or used a non-functioning web app to make a restaurant reservation or something like that? I know I have. And if we recruit AI to help us automating the boring parts, maybe we can improve much of the bad or even non-existing software, which is gonna benefit everyone. So maybe if AI makes us like 10 times faster at some distant point in the future, it might enable us to write 10 times more software. So those are the kinds of positive effects that many people don't even think about. And there are probably many more positive effects that we can't even imagine yet. So in conclusion, AI will help us, not replace us. It might take some boring coding tasks away, allowing us to focus on what really matters: building amazing software, and building a lot more software faster. This means there won't be fewer jobs in the future, but actually maybe even more. So please keep learning JavaScript or React or whatever it is you're doing right now. And don't stop this whole AI narrative from progressing on your journey of learning web development and building amazing software. Plus, learning programming teaches you foundational skills like logic and reasoning. Basically, it teaches you how to think, and those skills will always be relevant, and maybe even more so in the future. And with this being said, let's now actually try our hands at using AI to solve a challenge, following the process and the guidelines that we just talked about in this video.